This episode of the Pain Education Corner is sponsored by the Camella Foundation. The Camella Foundation is committed to relieving pain naturally using osteopathic healing principles. Here at the Camella Foundation, we envision a world where people achieve their maximum potential by being empowered with knowledge and skills to heal themselves and others. This information is to be used for educational purposes only and not to be construed as medical advice. If you have any questions or concerns, please consult a licensed healthcare professional. Hello, it's Bill, the knee pain guru, and welcome to the Pain Education Podcast brought to you by the Camella Foundation. Today's podcast, we're going to do a little bit different than we normally do. We have our special friend from down under, Calvin Smith, back. And today we're going to talk about the Russian Pravilo. The Russian Pravilo, we're going to demonstrate. I have one built here. Calvin is going to build one down in Australia. And what we wanted to do was go over some elements of the Pravilo and what our limited experience of it is and what we could share. Calvin's got some questions about building his. I've been into it a couple of years, so I've got my experience of it, and we'll just kind of roll with it from there. So it's live without a net. You're going to see everything is going on in the garage over here where I'm at in Western North Carolina in the United States. And we'll go with that. So welcome, Calvin. Thank you for coming back.
Bill, my friend, it's an absolute pleasure. Privilege.
So how should we start this? How should we
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll give you a little bit of context. I met Arsene way back, and I didn't realize I'd met Arsene, and that was at the Sistema Instructors Camp back in 2010, I think. So we all met up at Yonjan Steele's at Vladimir's Academy, and then jumped on the bus for 5 hours. And like I said, I met Arsene then, didn't realize until maybe a couple of years ago. And I'd seen what he'd been doing at Pravilo USA. So we actually built a Pravilo about 4 or 5 years ago, maybe even a bit longer, here in Sydney. But it was a radically different design in that because we were using a hired space 3 times a week, I actually, with my background in engineering, I built it so it was collapsible. Mm-hmm. So we had a collapsible Pravilo, but unfortunately we didn't have the height. It was only like 1.5 meters off the ground. Mm-hmm. So for the basic fundamentals, it was great. But as I said, where I'm living now, I've been hit up by so many community groups and actual, in institutions, and they've said, "Oh, hey, look," as I mentioned previously, they've seen me just doing low acrobatics in the park, right. And they've said, "Mate, listen, what you're doing, it looks really healthy." And it's been guys who have stopped me, guys and little kids. You know what it's like, right? Sistema attracts a certain type of person. And when I'm looking at some of the issues that these people are having and how you can see their emotional issues in their form, structure, and movement, there is a huge need for breath work. And I'm thinking, look, Pravilo would be a wonderful way to accelerate healing. And also, it feels damn good.
Yes.
It's just one of those,
10 feet tall when you're done.
Right.
Maybe
so 10 feet. Okay.
Get some video.
Because that's what one of the things I was wondering. How are you at that height? How thick the beams were in the corners. That was something I really wanted to get my head around.
Okay. We have the structure is 10 foot by 10 foot.
Right.
Are you guys metric over there?
I'm the Imperial works for me. I'm British. Okay. So don't worry.
We won't hold it against you. We won't hold it against you.
Excellent.
Okay, let me get this moved around a little bit here. Okay. That might be good.
That's marvelous. Yeah. Okay. Because as I said, it was the bracing in the corners, because I was wondering how you were maintaining the stability at that height with the free weights. The design I had previously, it was actually winch operated.
Right. We looked at both the winch and the weights, and we went with the weights because there is more movement you have
Yeah.
when you're suspended in the four corners. The winch suspends you, but most of the movement is intrinsic within your
Yes.
own body. Whereas
Yes.
with the weights, the weights go up and down as you're moving.
More dynamic. Yeah, more dynamic.
With the
I
weight.
mean, both approaches have their pluses. I just love that design because I think with the weights design, you can always go to a winch. I mean, that's the flexibility in that design, which is really, really where I see the attractiveness of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
This came out of, I had a client that I worked with. He broke his back twice, and I worked with him for 6 months. We got him completely out of pain.
Okay.
Like, what do we do now? And I was like, well, we got you out of pain. And he's like, no, I want to do some exercise stuff like that. And I was like, I had these wraps. I had some connections through Vladimir School in Toronto that had a brother in the Ukraine that they made the wraps.
Yeah.
For the suspension of it. So I had a pair of wraps that were sent from the Ukraine to Toronto, and then I had a buddy from North Carolina that drove to Toronto to train with Vlad, and then brought it back.
Yeah.
It was this long, complicated thing. But so I said, hey, I've always wanted to build one of these things. Showed this guy, he was a mechanic, and he's like, oh, well, we could build it like a deck, as opposed to like where you have bolts that are holding things together. So you look here, these are screws in here.
Yeah.
And it provided more stability in this than if we went with bolts through like this setup right here.
That is what I found, because with our setup, you really had to tighten those bolts. And then I had reinforcing plates. Right. And the thing was, that was only like barely a couple of meters off the ground. So I thought, look, if we're going to go for something that's full standing height, which ideally, you know, that's what you want. Right. I just didn't want the thing collapsing with someone in it.
Right.
Because some of our guys at the time, they're big boys. You know, like you got someone 100 kilos, you know, and when I mean 100, I mean fit. You know, wrestler trained since a kid, 100 kilos. When they're moving in the Pravilla is gonna flex.
Yes.
You know? Yeah.
So we built it like a deck, like a deck on the back of a house. So it was screwed in, there's screws in there. These are 6-inch boards by 10 feet, and it's 10-foot square.
So those beams at the top there, they're about what? 3 inches thick?
No, this is only about 1 inch thick.
Really? Okay.
Inch
but
thick,
you've got the bracing there, so okay, yeah.
Bracing there. So these were 2x4s that were added on after the fact, because we had some guys that did some slack work and some climbing that were kind of testing it out. And they added these braces in the corners to provide a little bit more stability with it.
So it doesn't flex so much. I like that. Okay.
So those were put on afterwards, and that helped a whole bunch.
Okay. So what are you doing for the feet of those posts? Because I'm assuming it's not screwed into the ground.
No, it's not. These are 4x4s that are 6 foot high.
Excellent.
4x4, 6 foot high, and they are just on the concrete.
Got you. Okay. I see what you've done there. Okay. Yeah, I like that. Okay, that gives me ideas. So one of the things that has always got me with the suspension design is the calibration of the weights.
Okay.
Because it makes it easier to get in and out of if you're training on your own, doesn't it?
This setup, I'm not able to train on my own. I have to have a partner. in order to
Right.
do that.
Got
Now,
you.
our Cine, we really should have had him in on this. He's like the guy, but there was he's got these other attachments that are like, I guess they call them eagle claws, where one end you can strap yourself in with the feet, and the other end you could hold on to these, they're like each finger, and it distributes the tension in it.
Okay.
So you can let go of it. He has a different setup, and I think he's figured out efficiently
How to make.
Okay, here we go. So where were we in your questions and talking about this? Like Arsini, I mean, it's like I liken Arsini to when I go to train with Vlad. You know, you can go to train with Vlad, and he has such a wealth of information. He can give you this much.
Yeah.
And you could work with that for the next 6 months. And I kind of look like Arsini in the same respect, that his knowledge of this is far surpassed because of just the amount of time that he's spent working on this.
100%, definitely.
And there's part of it where we kind of have to go through the steps of learning progression. So that's kind of where I'm at. So hopefully I can show some information, and maybe we can do a
100%.
call with
And the thing is, and I think one of the things that's greatly underestimated with this type of work, with the Privilla and the emphasis on breath work, so that you can use the Privilla safely for a start. Because that was always a problem of mine. I would have students turn up to jump straight into Privilla, and I'd say, no. You're going to do at least 10 minutes of intense breath work first, because the last thing I want is you having a hernia.
Right.
And then blaming it on the equipment. It's down to you, that personal responsibility. But the thing is, because you're doing that deep core work, and you're combining that with the breathing and the orientation, you're getting such a three-way nervous system, the whole body, the entirety of where you're having to get that mind-body fusion working. The vagus nerve is cracking. The cerebral brain is cracking. The spine is moving. The viscera is moving. And the whole body has to become coherent. That is a whole level of education which is greatly misunderstood. And it's kind of like describing an elephant to a blind man. You're going to have a dozen different ways of explaining it. And it's not until someone gets in it and goes, oh my God. And you'll have one person say, Privilla is the most relaxing thing I've ever done. And then you'll have another person go, that is the most painful, terrifying thing I've ever done. But that's the whole point.
Yeah.
A large part of it.
I think the thing is when people see it, they see people suspended in it. And that can be terrifying. And one of the things Arsini shared with me was how you don't start there.
Yeah.
You start gradually. You begin to understand the tension on the joints in traction, and begin to get used to that. Now, it's very similar to how they talked about Systema in the terms of like when you start punching, you don't blast somebody the very first time because it can destroy them inside. So you want, they talk about the egg. Have you heard the egg analogy?
Please.
Everybody, we all have like this egg inside. And what you want to do is you want to crack the egg just a little bit. So then something more stronger and more beautiful grows out of the cracking of that egg. You don't want to hit the egg so hard that you crush the egg. And
it's
then
almost, it's almost like principles of a post-traumatic growth type template. You need, it's the old saying, what doesn't kill you, but you experience it both physiologically and emotionally simultaneously. And that's what, I've always really loved Privilla for. Yeah.
So it's like you just want to push the person enough out of their comfort zone that challenges them, but not so much out of their comfort zone that that destroys them, that puts them into a place of fear where they would not want to come back and do it again.
Yeah.
Because we all have a different capacity for that neurological shift to take place.
Definitely. I mean, one of the exercises that I used to do with my guys was that we used to do an exercise. I think it was maybe even Vladimir that used to promote this exercise, whereby you'd have 5 training partners and one of you lies on the ground, and it was like an escapology thing. And you have your buddies grab a wrist or grab an ankle and pull.
Right.
And then basically, again, it was about that 3-dimensional doing the figure of 8s to feel, oh, if I move this way, you know what, I'm going to tear something. But if I breathe and move the other way, I have fluidic movement. My chains are working, my functional, chains are working for me as opposed to against me, and it doesn't hurt, and I escape. So It's understanding your own movement and also internal movement and how that's breath connected. How you can reduce things like stress, emotional pain, anxiety, and physical pain. And like you said, and then you're moving from the inside.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just such a multi-dimensional piece of equipment.
Mm-hmm.
It just works on so many levels with the correct instruction.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. What else do we want to, you were talking about the proper weight.
100%. For, gauging weight by practitioner size, that sort of thing.
So my understanding is, in order to get lift off, they refer to it as, to suspend with the weights, is your body weight plus 100 pounds divided by 4. So on each limb, it's going to be equally distributed.
Got you.
To get that where it's the weight is actually suspending you. So that is for full suspension. But what's been spoken to me about it is that's not where you want to start.
No.
You would want to start with maybe half of that or quarter that initially to get the feeling of the tension on the joints. You have to take into consideration, like what you were talking about, the breath work, other elements of maybe push-ups, sit-ups, and squats to condition the body a little bit to get it prepared and warmed up. And then go into putting the tension on the joints. One of the things that I found out with this is going face up. So you're lying on your back, face up towards the ceiling, is the position to start with for a beginner, because you're not stretching the chest out face down. It's less intense.
Yeah. Also, one of the things I found is dealing with fear. I noticed that for some people, when they're facing uncertainty, just being face down, when there's uncertainty lodged in the psyche, that's enough to really push them over. I've already had some guys go, so you're telling me I'm going to have my ass up and I can't see what I'm doing? And I'm like, whoa, because it's a very real fear. And anything that causes tension in the body, tension in the nervous system, that's something you got to look at, because the probability of a significant injury increases if we're not careful.
Right. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So what is that? Look, because I'm thinking, I'm by the beach, so I'm thinking of using sandbags actually, and just maybe weighting them out at 5, 10, and 15 kilos. But I don't know if sand would have the density and just probably make a big bloody mess everywhere. Or maybe, I don't know, we'll work something out. So how are you actually suspending those weight plates onto your cables?
That was a process that worked initially. It's like, we built this in an afternoon. We built the structure in the afternoon, which it didn't take all that long, because the guy who was helping me really understood. My brain doesn't function.
We've got guys that build decks in Oz, so believe me, I reckon we've got allies.
Right. So we got everything built and it was set up. and then we were trying to figure out, we had some kettlebells and we had a little bit of weights and we had, hooks and stuff like that. So we had enough weight to stabilize one end. So we stabilized the feet and then we suspended the arms. So there was give with the arms. And all we did was tie kettlebells to the end of a rope to use it for suspension. So then I started buying more weights, and here's what we ended up working out. We took a barbell, one of the thin barbells, and we cut it in equal parts. So there's a barbell that goes all the way through, and there's a small.
I see.
Yeah. So what that does is we're able to unhook this, slide it down to the ground, and you have to put a block or something to keep the weight.
Smash.
Well, just keep it suspended enough, because you also have to have a hook on the other end.
Yeah.
And so you had to find the right length that was going to pull you off the ground, yet keep the weight from touching all the way to the ground.
Got you.
That makes sense? So you had to measure yourself. You had to measure the length of the ropes while you're on the ground.
Because that's the other thing. You get tall guys and you get guys who are slightly under tall, like my good self. And then you've got to readjust, like all the couplings. What we used to do was, I actually had, believe it or not, chains at the other end between the wrist and ankle cuffs. So you could adjust the length by basically using a carabiner and then sliding it up and down, which, kind of worked for a while. Yeah. But again, it's a different design. So I'm thinking that I like your approach. I do like your approach.
Yeah. So that's how we set up the weights. I mean, it was one of those go on Craigslist or where people were just selling old weights, and that's what we used in the different things. They're within 5 to 10 pounds in each corner. It's not an exact science on this, and it works phenomenal. You get off of it and you feel, like I said, 10 feet tall. It's just amazing how it compresses the joints, and it stretches you in ways that conventional stretching could never ever touch.
Well, that is what I used to really like, that cross-lateral internal stretch, which is why I used to say to my guys, 10 minutes of breath work, because listen, you will find parts of your body you never knew you had. Yeah. On the inside. And like you said, it's just, and the guys, we did have a couple of guys, good friends of mine who've been wrestling since childhood. They fell in love with it instantly. One guy almost fell asleep in it, literally, like out, he's like, wow. Just, oh, my neck, my back, I feel so, and it's like the energy, I have energy, and you're like, yeah, a correct spine does that. So brilliant, man. I'm so grateful, and I'm eternally grateful to Arsene for all the support that that he's provided. And look, this would be great as an international community. I know that Lauren has built one in Auckland. And it's funny because you have this picture up on your Facebook page or on your club's web page, and people see that they have one or two responses. It's like, yeah, I want to get in there. Or it's like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah, you're doing some kind of crazy kinky stuff.
You're doing some weird, is there whips involved? And you go, well, there can be. Wow.
Yeah. There's a few more things I want to point out here that may not be so obvious. One is you set up there's always going to be a foot end and a head end. And the reason is there's more options on the head end because the arms have more flexibility.
Yes.
So the foot end is pretty simple. It was basically a foot from the corner and another foot from the corner
Okay.
on both ends. So you have
Different statues of people. Oh, I see. So you can actually just move the pulleys from. Okay, I see what you've done.
So
Yeah.
I would move this to here.
For a shorter practitioner. Got you.
Well, no. It's not a shorter practitioner. It is the angle at which it's hitting the hips.
Got you.
So
Yeah.
you either have the arms and the legs more in line with these
or an
two
X type.
inner ones, and then
Yeah.
if you move it out, it's a more a sharper angle on the hip. It's going to stretch the hips differently.
Ah, I see. So if you're wanting to work, yeah. So if you're looking at working with the psoas, obliques, scap, you've got more flexibility.
And it's also with when you're rotating, because you can be face up.
Yeah.
And when you're suspended, you can rotate to face down, and vice versa. If you're face down, you can rotate to face up.
Yes.
When you're doing that rotation, the more straight the angle is with the legs and the arms, the easier it is to rotate. The more you bring the arms out, the more you bring the legs out, the more torque it is in the shoulders and in the hips.
Yeah, you need to really start the movement. And that's the funny thing, because that ideally, I mean, it's another level of breath work, because your torque engine that starts with the breath, and it's much more of an internal movement than if it's just purely a rotation.
Yes. And there's levels of it because there is a certain degree of relaxation.
Yes.
When you're stretching, the more you get used to and calm your nervous system down to be in the harnesses, to be supported with it, the more you can relax, the more you're using just the rotation of your torso.
Yes.
Instead of you fighting the tension in your arms to rotate over.
Yes. I mean, ironically, I was watching Arsene do some work a couple of years ago, and where he had actually a couple of hooks in the ceiling, and he was doing some tension work. And so I put together a little bit of a trapeze. I literally went to the local hardware store and got a couple of pieces of rope, and I put it up a couple of times. And so you can literally build something, a Privula-esque trapeze, where basically you've got your arm and leg from each side, or arm, wrist and ankle. And so you can invert, you can flip, you can rotate. And I put that together because I really missed my Privula. And I wanted something really simple. And I put that thing together for like, what, $30 with grips from the local hardware store and the gym. You know, that the straps they use for some of those resistant band type arrangements. So I think you've got that wonderful contrast. But again, if you try to muscle it, all you're going to do is, don't muscle it. Don't muscle it.
Yeah.
You know, breath-driven movement always.
Yeah. Let's talk about the head end of it. This, and how we set it up. We had 3 positions. So we had the similar ones, 1 foot from the corner, 2 feet from the corner. But we also added one out to the side.
Okay.
And that one, so your arms are almost like this.
Wow.
When you're suspended. And what happens with that is you could get this crazy stretch that's similar to that of a Sistema roll.
That's what I was thinking. You're doing more the. Okay.
No. I'm talking about you're inverted, and you're almost halfway rolled over.
Okay.
Right. it's nuts when I first ended up like that. So you could kind of do like, you know, how if you were rolling
Like a
around.
combat roll.
Yes.
Brilliant. I love it.
Yeah.
I see it now. I see it.
Yeah.
But you'd lead with, you'd pick a shoulder to lead with, and
Right.
then invert, and then rotate out, and then pick a shoulder to lead with. But
Yep.
the whole body should follow. And if
Yep.
you're breathing correctly, the legs and the hips should just follow the rest of the spine.
Yes.
Brilliant.
You get so far and you're stretching, your shoulders are being stretched down.
Yes.
The weight is pulling your shoulders down. So it really stretches a lot in your upper back in ways you could never, ever get to.
How does that feature on the lumbar spine and and much lower down? I'd imagine that would cause a massive like decompression as well, because your legs are going one way, but you're talking forward with the upper body.
It can, and it depends on the angle. Once again, the angles there are going to determine the stretch. When it's more in alignment, I've got more of a stretch in the lumbar spine.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to end up with sore hips.
Yes.
And a very loose groin.
Possibly.
Possibly a loose groin. Yeah. Oh, superb. Yeah.
A few more pieces here. We put swivel hooks.
Yeah.
Here, and this allows to pivot with
whichever hook position you go with.
And then, yeah, we didn't need them for the feet. We just had the pulley system. Yeah, and you want to make sure you're overrating all of the weight. Like you have a weight rating on this, you have a weight rating on this, you have a weight rating on this, weight rating on this, and on
I
this.
went for all marine grade fittings.
Yeah.
Because I was like, and even the winch was a marine winch, is what I used. Even then, the winch still slipped.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's the torque that people don't quite understand. Then once you're breathing and you're moving, you'd be surprised, like, well, you know, the torque and the energy that you can generate through your body. And that's the benefit of what we do with our martial training, in that it should look effortless, but be overwhelmingly powerful. You shouldn't see it. That's the whole point. You shouldn't see what you know, the guy should be too. I used to find, that's why I found it really good when I was doing door work. If you've got someone bigger than you and you want to keep things quiet, you want to move powerfully and effectively without creating a scene. Mm-hmm. And hopefully without doing too much damage or any damage to yourself or whoever you're working with. But they should still feel it. Right. And I think Pravilla is... yeah, but I think this is why I just love this piece of equipment. You can learn so much about yourself with this piece of kit.
Yeah. I've had my own, when I was 3, I had my shoulder pulled out of the socket. And so it was a very old injury that I don't ever remember not having.
Yeah.
And the Pravilo was extremely revealing in terms of both stretching out the shoulder in ways I would never, ever be able to stretch it out, and moving it through ranges of motion that was extremely challenging. And of course, this is going to be like a direct approach. It's going to be very like invasive, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Intensely. And at the same time, between Pravilo experiences, I would work indirectly. I would use more like subtle, gentle, working with the tension patterns in the neurology and in the muscle fascia, wherever the scar tissue was. So I was releasing these patterns kind of like pulling taffy. You're going to push it together and then you're going to pull it apart, push it together and pull it apart. And the range of motion that has gotten into the shoulder that I never knew I could have was gained as a direct result of working with the Pravilo.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's just I'm needing to get back into it big time because I've been doing a lot of archery recently, this last year and a bit. And I love my archery, but it can give you imbalances, significant imbalances. So I've been working with my left shoulder for a while, but then if your left shoulder goes, what's going to happen to your right hip? What's going to happen to the other side of your neck? So for working out imbalances, and it used to always get me that you'd have someone say, oh, why is it if I'm working on my right shoulder, why is my left side sore? And you'd go, well, you might be guarding, but you know, when certain patterns of posture and patterns of being, patterns of movement, and then that dictates patterns of breathing, people lose track of these connections. And Previlla is a good way of keeping you honest as well.
Yes.
Very, very honest piece of training equipment.
Yep. Yeah.
And I love what you've done with that, man. It's just awesome.
Yeah. Well, we've been training once a week on Thursday mornings. We train here. I have a buddy that's been driving up from Systema guy, actually from South Carolina, and we've been doing it once a week. And of course, it's open to other people who are interested. But it's just been phenomenal.
Yeah. I mean, I can't wait to get ours up and running because, like I said, there's so many people that need it. Like I said, we've got, guys with PTSD, we've got people with various forms of self-medication and addiction. And just give them the opportunity to use something like this so that basically they can heal themselves, because like you said, a lot of this is inherent in the body, but we live such zoo human domesticated lives these days. And like I said, it used to break my heart, but I've gotten to the point where I'm like, yeah, whatever, because you see it everywhere. You see so much dysfunction everywhere. I mean, I just walk down the road and I see IBS everywhere, literally. And, I see metabolic failure everywhere. And it's just generally because people have no sense of, or a very low sense of internal awareness. And by the time it does become apparent to them, it's kind of like too late most of the time. They're going to have something cut out, Yeah. So yeah, what can you do? What can you do? But Previlla is certainly going to go a long way to helping me do what I need to do here. So that's going to be awesome. And also, I've got some guys that are gagging to get back into one. So as far as I know, we had the first one in this part of the world, like on the continent of Oz. So this will be the second one. I'd love to be corrected. Hopefully there are other clubs out there and we can all collaborate. So that'll be awesome.
Yeah, there's a lot of, Arsini has taken it to multiple ways of working with it that I am yet to incorporate. If I'm able to get on it once, twice a week, just to stretch, it just feels amazing.
And the other thing, Arsene also has great choice of music in his videos.
One more thing about this, and that I learned from watching some of the other videos, is that you don't want to lift weights within a couple of days of getting on the Previlo, because one is pulling the neurology in traction and the other is doing it in compression. So there's a vulnerability with the joints, with the body.
Yeah.
You get on a Previlo, you got to give a couple days before you go and try to lift heavy weights.
We had one guy that was an avid competitive CrossFitter who used to come.
Oh boy.
And have you ever heard that term, squeal like a pig?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He you know what I mean? He didn't have a good time in the Previlla. But the thing was, you could feel the vibration in his muscle tissue. It was shocking. So literally, we'd have to massage the guy for half an hour before he could even look at Previlla. And that was after breath work. Everything was just vibrating at just the wrong frequency to be doing that kind of work.
Yeah.
And you kind of got the feeling that a lot of what he was doing was corrosive. But look, it's different strokes for different folks. But the thing I do like about Previlla, with Previlla, you're training for longevity. There's no reason why if you're in your 60s, you shouldn't be able to, with correct training and a little bit of, preparation and conditioning, you should be fine in that piece of equipment.
Yeah.
So again,
I think it's just a different, like when people are training for competition is not geared for necessarily sustainability or longevity of the body. Competition is more for the performance. And when you're training for sustainability and longevity of the body, the mentality is drastically different.
Yeah. I mean, you do see, emotionally, psychologically, where the person's coming from, I find I see a cutover depending on how emotionally mature the person is.
Whoa. Easy. Slow down there, buddy.
You just get some people, it's like, no, you're not ready for it. But you don't understand. I've done this and I've done this and I've smashed this. And you're like, no, you definitely ain't ready for it. You're just gonna hurt yourself.
Yeah.
You're gonna sprain a giblet or something.
What the kids are calling it these days.
Or giblets. It'll be plural, believe me. But I just love what you've done there with that piece of equipment. It certainly sparked my imagination and my zeal for getting one. Because look, the community needs one here. Yeah. And it would help so many of the local kids, I think, as well, just to help them develop that internal sense of the internal compass, basically, that sense of right and wrong, as in I can feel my gut and the computer says no. Mm-hmm. Job done.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that'll make it a little bit easier for you, because I was trying to figure out things from Arseni's videos and these guys.
I have paused Arseni's videos. That is how I come up with the first design. Mm-hmm. And even then it's got bits on it and bits off of it. But then, like I said, we had to build ours so that it was collapsible. Mm-hmm. So kind of we did have a height limitation, because if it's collapsible and you're bolting it together and unbolting it every week,
right?
It gets to the point where you go plus 2 meters, you lose all your stability. And even times you'd hear it creaking and groaning and you'd be like, oh. So having something that's going to be permanently fixed once we've got our gym space established, that would be awesome. So, we're looking to have, Systema, wrestling, boxing, and other types of cross-functional training, maybe even a climbing wall in the facility. Basically anything that will help the community engage, and having the Pravilla, because it's far enough off the beaten track that people will look at it in their heads, they'll kind of get it, but it's when they get it in their body.
Sure.
And then they can go off and heal themselves, because like I said, they'll have that internal awareness. And once they've got that, what's right for me, what's not right for me, that hopefully will translate to diet, environmental decisions, life choices, basically just getting that internal computer to function properly.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's what it's about, hopefully.
Well, it seems like we're gonna tie a nice little bow on it for today.
Yeah. Well, mate, you're an absolute legend. I'm deeply grateful for your time and for the commitment, and and always being a great buddy. We always have these great chats, bro.
It's always fun having the conversations with guys that are looking several steps ahead and how the body functions and works and operates.
Yeah, there's not many people you can speak to because everyone thinks you're mad.
Well, I've come to accept that. Like, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, my brother's had his own martial arts academy now for 20 odd years. Mm-hmm. And one of the pieces of advice he gave me when I got back from Toronto was, don't affiliate with anyone. Just follow your gut. Do what you feel is right. Mm-hmm. And the people who understand it and who people will get you, they will gravitate towards you. And that's pretty much what I've been doing certainly for the last 20 years, pre-Systema, because the way I used to fight when I was competing, people would say, what was that you just did? And I'd say, I don't know, but as long as my leg hit your head, you slept for a little bit. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm okay, like you're saying, people think you're weird or mad or whatever it is, and it's there's that place where you see them struggling in their body. You see what they're doing is actually breaking them down, and then they're frustrated as to why things aren't working. And you just do it differently. You begin to listen differently. You begin to look at the body differently, and then everything just works.
That is why I used to love it when some of the guys, a friend of mine used to bring his toddlers, and he'd say, "Oh, I'll leave them in the carriage, or I'll leave them in this corner of the gym." And I'd say, no. We're going to use your toddler to teach the class.
Yeah, they're great. They're great teachers.
They are look, the original movement, the original feeling and form and structure, right? And like I said, it's because so many people have been, become domesticated, and then they don't understand how those functional movement patterns. That's the limitation of your cognition. Your brain and your body are using the same basic operating system. So if you can't move properly, and your brain is driving your movement. Cognitively, how stuffed are you? And then people wonder why they get angry. You can't move properly.
I'm not angry.
But hey, preaching to the converted. But once again, thank you so much, my friend. Let's definitely get this out there.
You are so welcome. We'll do this. You build one, and then what we could do is get Arsini on a call like this, and we could record like the three of us, ask him questions. And
absolutely, Arsene, we're coming for you.
That's right.
Oh, I love that gym, man. We're gonna need a sauna. Proper sauna.
We're working on it here. We're gonna bring one over here.
Oh man, look, I think with us we're probably gonna have to go infrared to start with, but look, it's a beginning.
Cool. Calvin, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for everybody that's watching and listening. This is Bill Paravano, the Knee Pain Guru, on behalf of the Camella Foundation for the Pain Education Podcast. Appreciate you being here, and we will see you on the next one.
Peace out. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you for tuning into this week's segment of the Pain Education Corner. Join us next week for another conversation on natural healing methods to eliminate pain. To learn more about the work we do at the Camella Foundation, please visit our website at the Camella, COMELLA, foundation.org.